I think that might be the breaking point for humanity is if contents like cease to be created and we didn't have something to do after working.
There's always Netflix, I can't really run out of stuff on there.
That's true. You think.
I saw a gift that was like, I finished Netflix today. It's like,
I finished Netflix.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Without a Roadmap. This is the show for product folks who don't know all the answers. My name is Yonas. I'm joined today by my co-host, Cameron Curry.
What's going on, everybody? Today we're starting off our new series, Customer Success 101. We're joined today by Nikki. So last series, we kind of went over the product management myths and misconceptions. And this series, we want to focus on learning a little bit more about customer success, what it is, who are the people that do it, and what's the whole entire function about. So Nikki, how about you start us off and just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here. My name's Nikki Oliveri. I'm the Director of Customer Success at LinkSquares. I've been in customer success for about 10 years now. So, worked at a few different, mostly startups, kind of in this realm. I kind of fell into customer success, to be honest. It wasn't something I purposely did, but kind of started off my career kind of getting into sort of like a product how-to entry-level role, and then kind of eventually just worked my way up into more of like a CSM and account management role. So I kind of just fell into it and really liked it and kind of continued down that path. And now I'm here.
Nice. Can you just talk a little bit more about your past experience as an account manager? From Yonas and myself, as product people, we always try to decide just try to draw a line between what the two roles are. I've been trying to do my research to educate myself to make sure I'm not totally missing the ball on what the differences are. I think I have a pretty good sense now after some talking with other customer folks and my good friend John, who's also a CSM at a different company. So just want to hear directly from you, like what the differences are, just so I don't flub it myself.
Yeah, well, it's funny you asked that because I think if you look at my past titles, a lot of my titles were account management, but honestly, it's the same thing as what in probably what you think of as a CSM. And I think that's kind of is sometimes a misconception. I think depending on the company, CS means one thing or another. Some teams have like an account management and a CSM role. Others have kind of a combination of one person and they have different roles. So it's kind of funny, I think, when I talk to people too, depending on their title, it could mean a completely different thing depending on the company. So although my titles have been account management, it really has been a similar role to probably what you think of in terms of a CSM or customer success. But I'd say, for the most part, a lot of times, if you do have sort of both roles, account management typically does focus more on the commercial aspect. So they may only manage the renewal or expansion opportunities. Whereas more of a CSM role might be more focused around the adoption of the product, maybe the onboarding, and really the general relationship management of the working with those customers. So I'd say that's typically how you see it broken out. But a lot of times, in my experience, although I had a title of account manager, it was more in that style of a CSM role. For us here at LinkSquares, we kind of have a combination role. So the CSMs are responsible for the full relationship management and adoption and getting value, but they also own the renewal and expansion side of it. So I think it just varies depending on the business and probably the industry too. So that's a little bit of background, at least in my experience.
It's kind of like all account managers are kind of customer success managers, but not all CSMs are account managers. One of those things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So I think it does vary. I'm curious, how does Parlor have it set up?
We're probably a super unique case. I'll let Yonas take this.
Yeah, that's so. I that's very flattering that you think we have a really organized and well developed customer success org. But essentially, and I think there's some thoughtfulness behind this. But Cam and I are essentially account managers or customer success managers. And the reason for that was, originally we actually sold primarily to product teams. So, for product people are, generally a certain type of person that prefers dealing with other product people. I think there's like a, a mentality, amongst product-minded folk where, they kind of gravitate towards that person. And so as a result, we thought it made sense to have Cam and myself working with, accounts and kind of providing technical support, as well as like, managing the relationship. And then, like you said, kind of dealing with, upsells and cross sells. But now as we're kind of expanding and, we're still in this role, but, we're seeing a lot of growth and we're, bringing on a lot of customers. So we're, especially working with other CSMs who probably understand what a good, customer journey looks like. So we've had to rapidly adjust and, I think we're doing a good job with that. We've kind of, put our heads together, put our like CS hats on and built out this kind of onboarding process. We kind of have this like customer health process and customer journey tracking. And this is all stuff that we've kind of had to figure out on the fly. And I think that's why we're now really interested in, speaking with folks like you. This is basically, a free education on, kind of the best practices, because we've been kind of thrust in this position where we kind of have to do something that requires a lot of thought. It's definitely an exciting opportunity to kind of figure it out as we go.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Nikki, so 2 questions for you. So you said you kind of fell into like customer success. So like what kept you in customer success? So because you've been in these roles for the last 10 years, so like what gets you excited about the CS function?
Yeah. I think for me, the part that I really like about it, and again, I've typically worked at smaller companies, but I think in CS, like we are the front lines of what the customers, are asking for, how they're using it. And we're kind of like the advocates internally. And as part of that, we really get to be involved in almost every other like department or kind of team internally, which I really like about that. Like we are obviously very closely aligned with sales and marketing, obviously with product and engineering and even like finance we get to work with. So that's the part that I really like about it, is that you really get to understand and learn like all different aspects of the business, and then kind of be like that front lines of the customer and kind of being like the voice for them internally. So that's what I've really enjoyed. And then just the relationship building side of it and getting to really understand and work with these customers over a long period of time and really understanding what their day-to-day lives are like and how we can really help. So that's the part for me that I, really enjoy and why I keep doing it.
Got it. That was a great answer. To maybe ask a tougher question, could you give us like a definition of customer success, like what the entire function is, and maybe like 2 to 3 sentences, if possible? If not, feel free to ramble on if you need to.
No, I think I was kind of thinking about this before. I think like customer success, yes, it's like a department and a team, but I think like especially for a SaaS business, like it has to be like a company initiative, and like the whole company should be focused on customer success. Without your customers, you don't have anything. So although I think it has to be something that everyone cares about and is involved with, like, again, we are the ones like kind of being able to be really vocal for the customers. We're the ones on the phone with them all day long and learning the most about it, and being able to share that information internally with other teams, I think is a big part of what kind of customer success is. And at the end of the day, like our job is to make sure that customers are getting what they need and want to continue to do business with us. So, but I do think it needs to be like a company initiative in order for it to, work well.
Yeah, something you mentioned a moment ago is kind of being the voice of the customer. I think that's becoming a lot more, a lot more important, or people are talking about the voice of the customer a lot more now. I'm curious, like, why do you think that is? Like, why is the voice of the customer more important now? And are there some kind of movements happening within tech, particularly SaaS, that are driving that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think the fact that, especially for you guys too, being, in product, I think a lot of times like the product feedback that we're hearing from our customers, those are the things that I would hope would like drive a roadmap for the most part. And I think, even our product managers want to be on calls more often with customers and want to hear it directly from them. But I think like, again, that's a really key part in kind of making decisions internally as a business, as where we kind of want to go next, and making sure that that's something that our customers are going to want to be a part of, or want to make sure like they're getting what they need out of it. So I think that's like a big part of it for sure. And again, like even working with like sales and other teams, like really understanding what customers are trying to get out of this and what challenges are coming up, and how we can kind of help with that. It's not always like product specific things, but I think that's, I don't know why it's maybe become more of a big thing now, but I do think it's really important and it's good to see. I think maybe customer success in general has become much more of like a bigger topic now. So I think companies are just more aware of it and understanding the importance of it. So that might be a part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. So like with the importance of like customer success being more prevalent in companies today, like how is LinkSquares organizing their customer success function, and how do you typically see it in other companies? Like, is it, I know you have at LinkSquares, there's like a combination role of account managers and CSMs. I know at other companies, they have those as two separate people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you can see it in a couple different ways. I think, yeah, for us, we have our customer success team includes our CSMs and then also our implementation consultants. So they're the ones that are mostly involved in the initial onboarding, but also more of like a technical resource throughout the relationship as well. And then our support team, that's more of like the, as inbound questions, their issues come in, handle those. So that's what at LinkSquares, how we have it set up. I have seen it at other companies where maybe like the CSM and account management role sometimes is more tied to sales. And you might have more of like the services and support function part of customer success, and even like operations or like maybe like training, that kind of thing can sometimes be a part of it. So I've seen it kind of in both ways, but the way we have it, and I'd say probably more typically you have like the CSM implementation support, all part of customer success. But I think where you do have a separate like account management role, that's where it can sort of differ.
Are you, I'm curious, at LinkSquares, is this process you're kind of like getting the voice of the customer? I know product people always swear that they're they're the kind of holder of the voice of the customer. They understand it the best. At least that's what I hear a lot. I'm curious. I disagree. I think that that's like, there's no product person that's, talking, no research is going to tell you as much as a CSM or even somebody that's just doing customer support, like front lines, like live chat. No research that a product person is going to tell you that. No metrics or analytics that you pull is going to tell you more than what you're hearing on a day-to-day basis. So I'm curious, like how are CS teams, able to most effectively share that voice of the customer with the teams that, can, kind of support that, whether it be product or kind of, product marketing and, things of that nature.
Yeah, I think a lot of times with being on that front lines in a CSM role or whatever capacity, a lot of times like what the customer is asking for might not be exactly what they actually need. And I think that's where like they might be saying, I want this button to be blue instead of green, but it's like, why do you want that to be that way? What are you really trying to get out of it? And I think that's sort of the CSM response or job to kind of translate what are they really, what are they asking for, but what are they actually trying to accomplish? And then communicating that with product, and then product's the one that says, all right, if that's what they're trying to do, then this is how it should like functionally work. But I think that's where the collaboration, I think as a CSM, really understanding like what's the challenge, what's the problem that the customer is trying to solve, and then kind of communicating that with product and working together to figure out like, okay, so what does that mean product wise, and what would be different? So I think that's how I sort of see things.
And what does that transfer of knowledge generally look like? Are you having consistent meeting? Yeah, it's like, are you meeting with product on a regular cadence? Is it, a Slack channel or, shared?
Yeah,
Google
I was reading this like report. I think it said that customer success spends the majority of their time with product. So super interesting to hear like how that process is at LinkSquares.
Yeah, for sure. And this is something, so we recently hired like 2 additional product managers. So we have a much bigger team now. So we've kind of made some changes recently, but yeah, exactly what you kind of outlined. So we do have a Slack channel that's actually a company-wide, just a general product channel, which is sort of nice because it gives anyone an opportunity to share product feedback, whether that's something that, our team's hearing directly from customers or sales is hearing from prospects. Even like engineers will throw in feedback that they've just like come across on their own. But it's nice because you kind of get to see all the different feedback that's coming in. But the other good thing is like product responds to every single thing in there, even if it's just saying, hey, this is a cool idea, we'll sort of log this, or, we're actually thinking of doing this, let's like maybe have a separate conversation. So that's been pretty nice just to be able to have that visibility. And then we do meet with product pretty often as well. So we actually have a weekly meeting with the CS leadership and all the product managers. And that's where we kind of have the ability to kind of share maybe common themes that are coming up, or kind of understand what's coming up in the roadmap the product's thinking of building out. So we do have that sort of weekly cadence. And then we also have a meeting that involves like sales and some of the other leadership, just to understand like the roadmap and more of the higher level vision. So yeah, I would totally agree. We definitely spend a lot of time with product.
Mm-hmm. In those weekly meetings, how do you both departments decide on what to actually prioritize? Like, what's that process? Like, are you all doing like some sort of stack ranking by the CS function? Like, hey, these are the most common things we're thinking about, so these should be prioritized, or like, what's that back and forth like?
Yeah, we definitely will like look at, all right, what are the biggest things that we feel like would make the biggest impact? So especially if we have like our largest customers are asking for this, or if we feel like that would make a big difference for like every customer that we have, we'll definitely try to like voice that and have those prioritized. Oftentimes there are like maybe more like one-off things that maybe won't affect every single customer, but are really critical for like a really big, account that we have that we're working on. So yeah, I'd say it's a little bit more informal in how we do it, but definitely that's the whole point of having that conversation, to kind of get together and make sure that the critical things that we're seeing are being like handled or added to the roadmap, but also kind of share from product standpoint, like what they're thinking of building and why, and kind of just have an open communication around that. So it's a little bit more informal, but definitely we will kind of take a look at what are the things that we think would make the biggest impact based on what customers are asking for.
One of the things that Cam and I do is like, we're also kind of involved in the sales process. We'll kind of have these discovery calls with folks, and a lot of times it's customer success managers that we're speaking with, VPs of customer success. And part of the call is literally, I'm probably like giving away company secrets here, but part of the call is dedicated to pointing out like how difficult it is for them to present a case around what their customers want to the product team. How just because of a number of reasons, like, feedback is, stored in different silos. It isn't really aggregated in one place. You don't understand who it came from, what's the context, so basically, trying to show like how many problems there are with providing the evidence to the product team around what is actually important and how it's going to impact your business. So I'm curious, like, how, in your experience as an account manager, CSM, have you felt that that's been, does that seem to resonate? Is that a big problem that you have in trying to identify how the things your customers are asking for are actually going to impact your business, so you can tell the product person, like, yeah, this is actually worth working on?
Yeah, no, I think that definitely does. And I think a lot of times, like, what we'll end up doing is like, we'll just get a list of all our customers and have the CSMs go in and be like, has this customer asked for this feature? And kind of like gives full proof of like, here's all of the customers that have asked for this, and here's like the total revenue that this would impact. And that usually will do the trick to a degree. But that's something we definitely do a lot. And we do try, I think, like, I feel like I've never found a process that works perfectly well, but we do have different like spreadsheets, or like we use Jira. So a lot of the stuff will go in there, but yeah, it is challenging to be able to track like who are all the customers that ask for this specifically, and how do we kind of like make sure we're able to track this and kind of share it internally. So I've seen it kind of like work in a number of different ways, but yeah, definitely I think the more like proof you can show of like, here's all the customers that are not only specifically asking us, but are kind of saying like, hey, they might be like a churn risk if we aren't able to do this. I think that definitely is, anything that's tied to revenue will, I think, kind of help to push things along. So
right. To kind of give you like maybe what is probably a pretty common thing that happens in a lot of businesses, how do you balance the relationship with a customer who has been, I wouldn't say ignored, but kind of deprioritized in their requests, when you have like a big whale come in and say, hey, I want all this custom stuff built in the next 3 months so that we can move forward with the contract? How do you balance that relationship? Because then for the next whatever time frame is, like, you're deprioritizing your other customers' needs and requests, and then you come back to them like, hey, sorry for like the ghosting you all for the last
It's the management. How do you manage relationships like that?
Yeah, I think especially being at a startup, like, there's only so many resources you have. And I think, that happens a lot where, obviously we'd love if product can just build stuff in a day, but that's not going to happen, obviously. So I think like that's part of our job, is to kind of set those expectations with the customer. And maybe there's not going to be the perfect product solution tomorrow, maybe it will be soon, but in the meantime, like, what are some things that we can do to get them what they need? Maybe it's not the ideal solution, but what are the workarounds? What are things that we can help provide for them? Maybe more like a services capacity, but what can we do to kind of get them what they need without, the product being there right this second? I think that's a lot of what the job is, and just kind of figuring out, what's the challenge they're having? What are they really trying to get to? And how can we get them the closest there, even if we have to put in a little bit more effort on our end to do that? So I definitely think that's something that's, comes up somewhat often.
Now that I think of it, that's something that I, kind of do already. It's like, I mean, even for, for any customer, regardless, it's like, yeah, I know we need that, but, resources, startup, blah, 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 like, this is how we can help you right now.
Yeah.
Have you found in your experience that like being more transparent and honest upfront helps a lot with that relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, the customers we work with, like, they're people too. They have jobs, They have lives, like, they get it. I think it's, I don't think people want to feel like they're being like lied to and then just like being told something just to kind of push them away. Like, I think they actually really appreciate and like respect if we're really transparent with them and just say, hey, here's what's going on. Like, we're dedicated to make this work for you, but here's kind of where we're at, and, be transparent. And I think too, like, I think one of the things that's really helpful for our team, like, our product manager is always willing to get on a call with the customer. And I think even just like that alone, even if we're not going to build the exact thing they want, I think they appreciate being able to like get their feedback directly to the product team, and feel like they're being heard. So I think that goes a long way too, just to kind of build that relationship even more and just show them that, hey, we're listening. We're not completely ignoring you. So I think that's something that we'll do oftentimes if we have a customer that's a little bit more, struggling with some of the product stuff. So
that makes sense. To kind of shift gears a little bit, to go earlier, you mentioned that one of like the key parts of the customer success job is driving engagement and adoption.
Yeah.
And so how do you typically try to do that in terms of with new customers, existing customers that have a renewal date coming up, or when new products or new features are released in the product?
Yeah, so we have a couple different, so we use a tool called Churn Zero, which is like a CSM tool. And so through that, we have a lot of, that's how we manage like our onboarding process. It's how we manage, how are all our, calls and emails and everything getting logged. It's how we manage our health scores. So a lot of that is done through that, where we can get kind of set up different segments and alerts so that if we haven't, had a call with a customer recently, we can get alerted about that and kind of run a play to send out an email to them. So we do have some expectations with the CSMs around how often they should be speaking with their customers. Differs a little bit depending on the, the size of the account or this segment. We do have those expectations in terms of how often they should be having a call with them. And that's something that they can kind of manage through that tool to kind of make sure they're staying on top of those accounts. And with the engagement, I think a lot of it too is like, again, a key role of the CSM team is sharing best practices and giving, like, educating the customers on how they should be using the product better. I think most customers don't use any product like 100% of what it can do. And I think that's kind of our job to look at, being able to track the usage metrics and look at, here's some key functionality that you're not using, or based on what your goals were, based on your business. These are some things that I think would really help you a lot. And here's what our best customers are doing. So a lot of that is a way to drive engagement. Instead of just like setting up a call to check in, like, what is the stuff that we think is going to get them on a call with us and actually want to talk through that, whether it's product features or like general best practices that we're seeing that they're not leveraging, being able to share that with them and kind of getting them to engage that way. And then same thing with adoption, that's a pretty critical thing. So using same thing with Churn Zero, we have all our product usage in there. So we can also get notified if like usage drops, or if we see like, some key users that aren't logging in. So we definitely leverage that a lot as well, just to kind of reach out and making sure that they are getting value out of it, and that we're continuously staying engaged with them and sort of pushing that adoption, across multiple people within the company. So we're not stuck with like one or two people. So yeah, I mean, that's a really key part of the job for sure.
I think we might need Churn Zero.
Well,
yeah, yeah. Like I'm familiar with Churn Zero. Yeah, I know. I'm like, we're familiar with Churn Zero. But I think just something, a tool like that can kind of help you keep on top of these things, because it is just kind of consistency and making sure that you're on top of everything. And as you grow, and we are growing, which is great, but without adding additional folks to help manage that workload, then it's more likely that things are going to fall through the cracks. I'm already noticing it. So nice little plug. I think I'm curious, are there specific metrics that you're held accountable for as a CSM? I know you're looking at product adoption, but is that something that a CSM would be held responsible for? Is that something that a product manager would be?
It's an interesting point. I'd say definitely it's not like a specific goal that we have, but it definitely is important, and they should be looking at the product usage to understand. I think holistically, obviously the product team's going to look at like the usage, but I think for the CSMs, for their specific accounts and knowing what's, what they purchase for and how they're using it, understanding like how they're using the product and making recommendations and how they could be doing more with it, I think is definitely something that the CSM should be paying attention to. But for us, the CSMs are mainly like the KPIs that we look at are, a lot of it's around health scores. So that does have a component of product usage. So to a degree, yeah, they are responsible and gold for that. So we use like for our account health, it's like a combination of, product usage, engagement. So how often are they talking with the customers? Also sort of their like objective feeling of the account, like kind of a general health score for them. And then if they've had like renewals or upsells recently. So that's a big part of it around account health. And then obviously the commercial aspect around like renewals and expansion, that type of thing.
I've always been curious to know how like accounts are assigned to the different CSMs, like what factors in that decision.
Yeah, so we have it set up. We have accounts segmented. We've kind of started to put this in more of formally or more officially recently, but we have accounts segmented mainly by the ARR, what they pay us. Mm-hmm. So we typically look at like strategic accounts and then more like the mid-market or SMB accounts. And strategic could also be maybe an account that's maybe their ARR is lower, but it's the potential is maybe it's a larger company, or we have a lot of customers that go through acquisition. So they get acquired by a much larger company. We'd probably count that as strategic. So we do have the CSMs, certain CSMs work primarily with the strategic accounts. Others work primarily with the SMB and mid-market. And that also depends on that, is also what affects how many accounts they have. So people that own the strategic accounts have fewer accounts since it's a little bit more involved. And in terms of assignments, when a new customer comes on board, obviously we want to make sure it's even and everyone has a similar number of accounts based on the segment. So it's a little bit of a round robin within the segment that they work in. But we do segment it based on the size of the account for the most part.
Mm-hmm. And like, when is like the decision made to hire an additional CSM? Is it just when the bandwidth has finally ran out and you just need another person in there?
Yeah, I mean, ideally we're hiring like ahead of the curve so that we don't get to a point where everyone's like, way over their bandwidth and then we have to kind of rush to hire someone. So ideally we're getting ahead of that. But yeah, we definitely look at like, depending on what sales is forecasting for how many customers they'll think they'll be able to bring in and how many we currently have. We definitely take that into account and try to keep like the CSM to account ratio as even as it can be. So typically we're trying to get ahead of that as much as we can versus like waiting till it's like, now everyone's really over capacity and we need to go and hire someone. But that's not always how it works out.
Yeah. It's like,
especially with COVID. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good problem to have, like having signing on too many new accounts and
exactly.
not being able to support them. It's like, oh no,
another account. Let's not have another account. Let's wait.
They'll stop selling. We need a break.
Yeah, I mean that's easy to say for us, but for the CSMs who have to take on that burden, who I guess that is us. So
a little bit of both.
Yeah, we're gonna have to hire another product manager to onboard all these new customers. It looks like.
But speaking of COVID, unfortunately, how has that impacted the CS function at LinkSquares?
Yeah, I mean, I think. So considering what we do, I think we've actually been in a pretty good spot. So our tool helps legal teams be able to search and understand what's in their executed contracts. And so when all of this hit, that was when a lot of companies needed to understand, like, whether it was their own customer contracts, maybe vendors or other parties that they're working with, what are either the obligations that they need to be aware of, or where are some opportunities where they want to make sure that they're not getting maybe like locked into contracts that they don't intend to renew, or some places where they can get some kind of leeway in terms of like payments or things like that. So we were kind of in a good position in that case, where we actually reached out to a lot of our customers offering to help. So this was a term that was something that was brand new to me. Obviously, I don't have a legal background, but I work at a legal company. But the concept of force majeure, which is just kind of a clause in contracts that allows you to like get out of certain contracts. And that was something that we actually ended up doing as sort of like a proactive project with our customers, where we reached out and said, you know, hey, we now are able to extract this information for you automatically, and sort of offer that up of like, here's all that information. Here's all the contracts that have that information that might be really, really critical for your business. So we were in a good position to kind of use our own tool to help customers that might be going through a challenging time with it. So that was really beneficial for us. And just, again, kind of helped to build that relationship of, hey, we know it's a hard time. We're here for you. We're going to do what we can to get you what you need using the platform. You know, we definitely had some customers that, you know, were hit pretty hard based on it. But I think overall, you know, all things considered, we were in a, you know, fortunately pretty good place to help our customers with everything going on. So that was good.
So on one thing that you just mentioned there is like, you know, as a CSM, you're kind of put in a position where you have to be a product expert for something that you're, you know, more than likely not familiar with.
Yeah.
So going back to us as, you know, the onboarding specialists and account managers, it made sense because we're selling a product that was at the time being sold primarily to product folks. But, you know, for CSMs going from company to company and, you know, basically having to become a product expert, teaching, you know, people outside of the, you know, their kind of comfort zone, like what is that process like? Do you have to spend like the first month basically trying to become somebody like a legal expert?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, especially I think for us, I always keep in mind is like, they're not coming to us for legal advice. Like, they are lawyers. They don't need that. They're coming to us to have a tool that's going to help them do their job better. So our job should be around, should be more of a product expert, be able to take, I think the key thing is understanding the use cases. Like, why are these legal teams needing to know this information? What does their day-to-day look like? So I think it's just understanding like what their world looks like and understanding the different use cases that the tool can help them with, and really mastering that versus trying to become like a legal expert necessarily. We're really just here to help them get the most out of the tool based on what we know and what our other customers are doing. So I think that's the key thing, understanding the use cases and being able to educate customers on that, depending on, you know, no matter what the industry is that you're working with. Definitely helps when you're working with people that are in the same role, but that's most times not the case. So that's mastering the use cases and the value that the tool or whatever it is will bring to that particular role.
Got it. Since we've been just asking you questions for the last, I don't know, 20 to 30 minutes, want to kind of finish with one question. It's more just like thinking into the future. How do you see the customer success function as a whole evolving over like the next 5 to 10 years? Because the last 10 years have seen like explosive growth in the function as a whole. It's like one of the hottest growing career paths to date right now. So how do you see the role overall evolving as we move into the next decade?
Yeah, I think we'll start to see even more. I think we're starting to see a lot of more like executive roles, like a, you know, chief customer officer becoming a really big role. And I think that's going to become a big thing. And I think just elevating it even more and making it so that every company really understands the value of customer success and why it's so important. So I think that will just continue to kind of elevate and continue to be a really big factor and really big team within companies, hopefully, and just being able to see, a lot more like career paths and things that are all involved with that to kind of, you know, move up to that kind of leadership position.
And to wrap things up, anything that you'd like to say on behalf of customer success folks to our audience of mainly product folks?
Well, I guess I kind of have a question for you guys. What are things that, like, what do you see, what would be helpful for you as product managers if you weren't on the front lines with customers today? Like, what are the things that you think customer success teams can do to better help you guys and kind of help work together better?
I think you hit on it earlier with one of your responses, is like extracting like why a customer wants a certain thing fixed, changed, or added. instead of just taking like directly, hey, I want this button to be green instead of blue. Like why do they want that? I feel like Jonas and I have, after talking with other product folks, like we've seen that as a growing complaint from their customer success counterparts, is that they just get like requests and they don't actually understand the context into why the customer's actually requesting that thing. So I think that's probably one of the biggest trends that we've seen from talking with our customers and other product folks in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing. And then I think there's like a misconception that customer and product teams are always going to be fighting over priority. I think if both of the functions come together and like are looking at the same data, the same usage patterns, the same things, I think it can be improved a lot. It can be more of a collaborative experience rather than just saying, hey, we need to be this, and then the product team pushing back and then the customer team pushing back, and then there's like this unneeded tension in the room or over Zoom now. So, because I just feel like, especially now when things are being more remote, if you have that tension, everyone comes off of a meeting, they go directly in Slack and start complaining about both teams, and it just leads to a mess. So I think just maybe trying to provide better transparency on both sides. So like, what's the product team actually working on? Like, how difficult is it to build the things that customer wants, and like the timeline for that? And then also on the customer side, providing maybe more of a sense of urgency and more context into, what you're already doing, more context into why they're requesting those things and why it's important for those items to be built.
Yeah. That sounds cool.
Well, awesome. Nikki, thanks so much for joining us. Let me know where to send the course dues, because this was highly informational. I'm gonna take my notes and make sure that we work on everything that you mentioned.
The masterclass.
Yeah. This has been really fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I think what you guys are doing is super cool. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, everybody, if you enjoyed this, please let us know. We got a couple more episodes just like this coming up, so stay tuned, and
be sure to like and subscribe, as we always get told to mention this at the end of the podcast.
So
like and subscribe, everybody.
Like and subscribe if you want.